front of the Peninsula Hotel. This is one of the favorite places that Tupac used to love to hang out. This is where the whole Faith Evans saga unfolded. And this is also where, many other things happened with Death Row Records. And so I wanted to talk today a little bit about the murder of Tupac. A couple of days ago, we talked about the involvement or the possible involvement of Snoop. And I wanted to kind of elaborate on a few things, one of which is, where do we learn about Kevin Gaines' involvement in the Tupac Shakur murder? We learn about Kevin Gaines' involvement from an FBI file that was released. And in that FBI file, we find out that not only was Kevin Gaines on special assignment in Las Vegas that night, but also Kevin Gaines had two of the management of LAPD that were also in Las Vegas that night. What does that tell us? Well, that tells us that the management of LAPD knew what was going on. Now, I don't know how many people knew, but the fact that some management from LAPD were in Las Vegas at the time working with Kevin Gaines on special assignment is a big deal. That also tells us that, and Gordon Martins, in the interview that I did with him in Las Vegas, said, nothing happens in a police department unless management is in on it and management knows about it. The only way for a jurisdiction like Las Vegas to allow three people, two of which are management of LAPD, to come in and be on special assignment in Las Vegas on a fight night is if they have permission to be there, which also means Las Vegas police, at least somebody in the Las Vegas Police Department, was involved in the murder of Tupac Shakur. And when we go back and we listen to what Michael Moore had to say about standing next to Reggie Wright Jr. at the time the shooting happened and hearing Gotham come over the radio, and then the very next thing was somebody coming on board on the radio saying, don't say nothing over the radio, and then Reggie Wright Jr. shut down the radios. So that also gives us another insight into the degree of complexity that the murder of Tupac had. And basically it was a military-grade operation. You have Nate Dogg, who is former military, who's on the phone following the entourage and reporting back to Daz what's happening. And that also tells us that there is a number of people that are involved. And so we start to see the scope of what it was that happened. And one more thing I'd like to point out to you is we already know about Compton Police Department. We saw Reggie Wright Sr. supervising the interrogation of Orlando Anderson. We saw Reggie Wright Jr., who actually intercepts Orlando Anderson at the end and escorts him out. And that tells us that Compton Police was all over the place. And Compton Police had worked previously on another fight night in Las Vegas, and that was verified by Compton officials. And so we get to see this complexity of what's going on that night. And it involves Compton Police, it involves LAPD, it also involves Las Vegas Police. Not the entire police force, of course, but certain people within Las Vegas Police were certainly in on it. And that makes me highly suspicious of the bike cops that pulled Suge Knight over, and he and Tupac are sitting waiting, and they pulled him over because their music was too loud. There wasn't a license plate on the car. That could have all been prearranged because you have security who's arranging everything. They could have put that car there with no license plate so that there's an excuse to pull it over. And then what do the bike cops do? They probably wait until they get the all clear signal that everything's ready, and then they let him go. They could have also held back traffic to make it thinly sparsed on a fight night. And so we start to get a sense for the scope of this. It involved the Rampart scandal cops. It involved the Compton Police Department. It involved the Las Vegas Police Department. You have George Kalisis, who was wired in with the police department, disarming all of security that night at 2 separate meetings. You have David Kenner, who's there. David Kenner is an attorney who attacked the evidence, and he's somebody who would know how a criminal trial works. And so the evidence in the criminal trial, if it was ever to happen, was attacked. You have a death certificate that's flawed. You have an autopsy that's flawed. You have autopsy photo that gets released that's flawed. You have the final photo that was taken of Tupac and Suge that's flawed. And that fuels the entire Tupac is alive theory. All of that evidence got attacked ahead of time. And so you have a very well thought out plan. You have the Compton police, who many months before had been working at the MGM hotel, scoping it out, planning. Now, the other thing that's interesting is that Tupac Shakur had a possession charge in Los Angeles, and 3 weeks before the fight night in Las Vegas, Tupac Shakur is sentenced, and his sentencing is community service. And what does he have to do? He has to perform at Club 662 at an event to benefit the police, a police charity. Now, isn't that kind of a very bizarre sentence for a California court to issue, to allow somebody that is charged with a crime to do their community service in Las Vegas? It's a very strange sentence. And so in order for that to happen, obviously David Kenner probably need to, talk to the judge, make some kind of arrangements. The judge, I'm not saying the judge necessarily knew that he was setting Tupac up for murder, but what it did do is it set a timetable, and the timetable was very simple. They had 3 weeks to do hard planning for this, because they knew that they could get Tupac and Suge in a car in an intersection that they chose in Las Vegas in the crosshairs. And we know from the confession letter that the big screw up that happened was that they left this to gangbangers to actually orchestrate the shooting, and they used non-armor piercing bullets. And so this was a big screw up, because they didn't kill Suge, and they almost didn't kill Tupac. And the only way that they were able to kill Tupac, I believe, was to finish him off in the hospital. More later.